Being alone is something most people are afraid of, but no one really talks about what it actually means, because when you hear the word alone, you automatically think of loneliness, emptiness, silence, and pain. And that's why people try so hard to avoid it. They stay in the wrong relationships. They surround themselves with the wrong people. They keep themselves constantly busy, always distracted, always connected, just to escape that feeling of being alone. But what if being alone is not the problem? What if it's actually the thing that can change your life the most? And I know that sounds strange, because being alone can feel heavy, especially at night, when everything slows down, when there are no distractions left. When your thoughts get louder and you start facing things you've been avoiding, your fears, your doubts, your regrets, your questions about your life. And that's uncomfortable, because most of us are not used to sitting with our own thoughts. We're used to running from them, distracting ourselves with our phones, with people, with noise, anything that keeps us from looking inward. But the truth is, you cannot grow if you keep avoiding yourself. You cannot understand your life if you never take time to reflect on it. And that's what being alone forces you to do. It forces you to face yourself, your reality, your choices, and your direction. And that's why it feels so uncomfortable. Because you're no longer distracted. You're no longer hiding. You're actually seeing things clearly, and clarity can be painful before it becomes powerful. Because once you see the truth, you can't ignore it anymore. You start realizing things you didn't want to admit. Maybe you're not happy where you are. Maybe you've been settling for less than you deserve. Maybe you've been staying in situations that are slowly draining you. Maybe you've been living a life that doesn't truly align with who you are. And those realizations are hard, because they mean something has to change, and change is scary. It means stepping into the unknown, letting go of what's familiar, even if it's not good for you. And that's why so many people choose to stay distracted, because distraction is easier than transformation. But here's the hard truth. If you never allow yourself to be alone, you will never truly know yourself. And if you don't know yourself, you will keep making decisions based on other people's expectations, other people's opinions, other people's lives instead of your own. And that's how people lose themselves without even realizing it. Slowly, over time, until one day they wake up and feel completely disconnected from who they are. And I don't want that for you. I don't want you to live a life that feels empty just because you were afraid to be alone for a while. Because being alone is not the end, it's a phase, a necessary phase, where you rebuild yourself, where you figure out what you actually want, what actually matters to you, what kind of life you want to live, and who you want to become. And that doesn't happen when you're constantly surrounded by noise and distractions. It happens in silence. It happens when you sit with yourself, when you think, when you reflect, when you become aware. And I know that's not easy. I know there are moments when being alone feels overwhelming, when you start overthinking, when you feel like you're falling behind, when you compare yourself to others who seem to have everything figured out. But you have to understand, what you see in others is only the surface. You don't see their struggles, their confusion, their doubts. And even if they are ahead in some way, that doesn't mean you're behind. It just means you're on a different path. And your path requires this moment, this phase of being alone, this time where you're not influenced by others, where you're not distracted by outside noise, where you can actually hear yourself think. And that's powerful, because once you understand yourself, once you become clear about your values, your goals, your direction, everything starts to change. Your decisions become stronger, your confidence grows, your boundaries become clearer, and you stop accepting things that don't align with you anymore. And that's when your life starts to move in the right direction. Not because everything suddenly becomes perfect, but because you become stronger, more aware, more intentional. And I know being alone is not easy. I know there are moments when you wish you had someone to talk to, someone to understand you, someone to share things with, and that's normal, that's human. But don't let that feeling push you into the wrong connections. Don't let it make you settle for less than you deserve, because the right people will come, the right connections will happen, but they will come when you are ready. When you understand yourself, when you know your worth, when you have built a life that doesn't depend on others for validation. And until then, this phase of being alone is not something to fear. It's something to use, to grow, to learn, to build yourself into the person you are meant to be. And one day, you will look back at this time, this quiet, uncomfortable, lonely phase, and you will realize that it was not a punishment. It was preparation. It was the time that shaped you, strengthened you, and guided you towards the life you were meant to live.